Hi, Amy. Thanks so much for joining us on Britain's Birth Stories podcast.
You're very welcome. It's lovely to speak to you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's begin with where are you based and who is in your family?
Yeah, so I live in South Wales. I am originally from Buckinghamshire. In my family, there is me, my husband, my little boy, who's 1, and our very crazy dog.
Oh, amazing. And what's your profession apart from taking care of yourself and your family?
Well, that keeps me pretty busy, but I have started a hypnobirthing business because I was so inspired really by the sort of birth that I had, that I felt the need to go on and share all the knowledge and everything that I'd gained and spread the word that positive births happen.
Wow, definitely. And I'm sure we'll get into that later on, of course. Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of your pregnancy, was this something you'd thought about and planned, or was this something that had sort of just happened?
We'd planned it, but it definitely happened quicker than I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to Bali in the October, and then we were like, yeah, we're going to have a baby. We're going to try for a baby. And then literally, by Christmas, we were expecting.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe just after, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it happened really quick because we were kind of like, oh, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, we're not in a rush. I'd been on the pill for years, to be honest, so I was expecting it to take quite a long time to fall pregnant.
Yeah.
So it kind of, as much as we were planning it, it still came as a little bit of a surprise just because we weren't expecting it to happen so soon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So obviously, apart from the feelings of shock, were you both still excited though?
Oh my God, yeah, we were absolutely over the moon. I was convinced I was pregnant anyway, so I think I literally peed on a stick, as you do. I think it was about 5 o'clock in the morning because I was so excited that I woke up. We'd planned that we were going to do the test.
Yeah.
And I peed on the stick, and I think I was still peeing, and it just went positive. And I was like, oh my God, I just sat on the toilet by myself. And I just ran into our bedroom and was like, see, I told you. That's how I've got the news, because I was just like, I don't even need to do a test.
Oh, that's so cute.
I was so convinced.
Yeah.
And then the reality sort of set in, and we were both a bit like, oh my God, we're going to be parents.
Oh, wow. And how was the pregnancy for you?
It was good. I don't really remember having any severe symptoms at all, really. I didn't have any morning sickness, thank God. I was really lucky. And the only sort of things that I noticed, and this is why I was sort of so convinced that I was pregnant, was I'd bend down to pick something off the floor and feel a little bit lightheaded.
Right.
And I totally went off coffee and meat, which is not like me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was so convinced I was. But apart from that, it was pretty good. I do have rhesus negative blood, so I had to go for the anti-D injection.
Yeah.
And I had to go for that quite a few times throughout my pregnancy, just due to a little bit of spotting, but nothing major. And I got really brave at having injections, so I suppose that's a positive I can take away from that.
God, look at you. I'm absolutely terrified.
But if you ever need them, or if anyone listening ever has to have an anti-D injection and they give you the option of arm or leg, go leg. That's a lot less.
Oh, wow. Okay. Take note.
Top tip.
Oh, wow. Okay. And when you'd gotten pregnant, had you thought about maybe how you'd like to birth and where?
I was completely crapping my pants about that part. So I remember going for I think it was my 8-week appointment, but I actually ended up being 4 weeks further along than I thought.
Wow.
So I thought it was an 8-week appointment to how you have to give all your details and stuff like that. And I remember saying to the midwife, I was like, I'm really worried that my baby's just going to get stuck. So let me do a little bit of backstory here. So I'm 5 foot, and my husband was £10 when he was born.
Right.
So I was like, I can't handle that. My body is not designed to birth a £10 baby. And she was like, oh, your body will grow a baby that fits. And I was just like, okay. She's fairly confident about that, if you say so. So because of that, I was like, I want to give birth in a hospital, because that was like probably the forefront of my mind, to be honest, from pretty early on. And having gone to Bali, the recommendations for Zika virus at the time was that you wait for 6 months after you return to try and fall pregnant, but we obviously fell pregnant a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So for that reason as well, I was like, yeah, I'd rather be under consultant care just so I get like extra scans to check everything's okay.
Yeah, definitely.
And I can have all the pain relief I want if I need it when the time comes.
Great. And how supported did you feel at that time? Not just with family, but also by your care providers.
It was quite a tricky time initially, because we actually, when I fell pregnant, my husband was working away in England, so he was like 200 miles away, and we'd made the decision that we weren't going to tell anyone until we'd had our 12-week scan.
Yeah.
So in terms of like family and stuff, I was kind of on my own because of our decision not to tell anyone. But hindsight, I probably would have told people earlier, because I think even if something had happened, I would have wanted their support.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of support from the midwives, I felt pretty supported. I think the only thing I would say through my whole pregnancy is that I didn't really have a lot of continuation of care.
Right.
So I saw a lot of different midwives, and some I really gelled with, which was nice, but then I didn't see them again. So that was a bit of a shame, but the NHS is so stretched that I think that's just one of the things, and there's probably many women telling you the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. It's so unfortunate, but it's happening in so many places, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And to be honest, all the midwives I saw were really caring, so I'm sure there's pros and cons to that.
Yeah, definitely. Right, going straight into it. So how did labour begin for you and progress?
So I was, in hindsight, actually, I think I was like in really slow labour for a couple of days. We went to IKEA, which, that's a lot of walking. Yeah. So I think that might have helped get things started, because I felt like just a little bit off after that. And then I had my show like the next day, and then nothing really happened. And to be honest, I didn't really think anything more of it. And then on the Monday, I went to bed as normal and woke up at about 4:45 in the morning. And I had a dream that my waters broke. And then when I woke up, I was like, oh God, I've peed myself. And then realised that no, I hadn't peed myself. My waters had actually gone.
Yeah.
So that was a bit spooky. And then I had group B strep. So when my waters went, I was advised to go into hospital. So that's another reason that I decided to birth in hospital, so that I could have the antibiotics.
Yeah.
Given through labour. So we packed up all our stuff and went into hospial. We went to McDonald's first because they just started serving breakfast. You don't need any more reason than that.
Yeah, definitely.
And when we got there, we were just sort of left for a bit just to chill out, and we just rested. I bounced on a birth ball for a bit and just chilled out, really. There was nothing, I couldn't feel anything happening. I was monitored on the CTG, and they said that I was having surges, but I honestly couldn't feel anything. It was really bizarre, and I don't really think she believed me, actually, in hindsight, but I was absolutely fine.
Yeah.
My waters kept going then, so I think that was probably my surges, making more water come away. So then we got to 8 o'clock in the morning, when we thought everyone's probably up, and just arranged someone to go and sort out our dog, let our parents know what was happening. And then that was it, really. We didn't really... Our day just continued like that. We were watching, like, stand-up comedy on Netflix, just, like, lots of things to help oxytocin get flowing.
Yeah.
And help labour get ramped up. Or started. I don't even know where I was at that point. And then probably about lunchtime, I think, I was examined for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And she said I was 4 centimetres. So at this point, I still hadn't really felt anything.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, awesome. And she gave me a sweep then, which I did agree to.
Mm-hmm.
In hindsight, I don't really know why, because I was at 4 centimetres and things were progressing. But either way. And then things did start picking up a little bit more. So we went and got... I feel like my labour revolves a lot around food. So we went and got lunch. And I went... after we had food, we went for a little walk around the car park. And that's when I started feeling like a little niggly, like period-like pain.
Mm-hmm.
And then that started coming really regular, really quickly, actually. And then by the time we'd done like a lap of the car park, the app we were using to time my surgery said to go to hospital.
Right.
So I was like, handy, I'm already there.
Exactly.
And then we went back, and on the way back in, I just said, I am starting to feel things. Can I get a paracetamol? Which I don't know why, because to be honest, I was managing it absolutely fine. I'm not sure if that even did anything.
Yeah.
And I've read studies since that say that it can actually slow things down. But hey ho. Yeah, we just chilled out for a bit. I then started to need to poo a lot.
Right.
So I did a lot of poos, which is always good for, listeners to know.
Yeah, definitely.
And after a while, I had my TENS machine put on, which I was absolutely fine, coping with it all, staying really mobile, upright, bouncing on the ball, standing up.
Wow.
And I must have been like that for a couple of hours. And then I remember thinking, oh my God, my feet hurt from where I've been walking around so much.
Mm-hmm.
And that just cracked me up then, because I was like, in labour, and I'm moaning about my feet hurting.
Oh.
But next time I'll get definitely really comfy slippers.
Oh, yeah.
Any excuse.
Exactly. And how did you keep going from there, considering you were doing really well?
Yeah, so I was there probably until about 3, and then I had a couple of really big surges, and at the same time the lady, so we were on the triage area, I guess,
Right.
at that point. And then the lady from the labour ward came up and was like, we've got space for you now. So we went up. I remember I was really adamant that I was going to walk up the stairs, even though she was like, we can use the lift. But I was like, no, I'm fine. But the stairs, I had some really long surges when I was walking up those.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to the labour room and I had a little bit of gas and air. And then after, I don't even know how long, because time goes weird, doesn't it, when you're in labour?
Oh, yeah.
We started hearing all this banging and crashing. And I was like, what is going on? And it turns out the room under us was having builders in.
Oh, my goodness.
And I was like, this is ruining my flow. So, to be fair, my midwife was absolutely amazing, and she literally disappeared and was like, I've just spoken to my boss, that will be stopping.
Yeah.
And it did, I think. I don't remember hearing it anymore, but that could be the gas in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, you must have so many funny stories about what women have said when they've been having gas and air. I literally was like, oh my God, people need to invent things that are like earplugs, but with music. My husband was like, babe, someone's done that. They're called headphones. Do you want yours? I was like, oh, okay.
Oh.
I know. I thought I was onto a winner there. But yeah, so I carried on like that for quite a while. And I had actually from the sweep onwards, I had quite a bit of bleeding like in my waters as it was going.
Mm-hmm.
But they said that was completely normal, so that put my mind at ease. And then when I went up to the room, I was examined again and had another lot of antibiotics. So that was my second lot.
Right.
And I was 6 centimetres then.
Wow.
And that was about 4 o'clock. And then I carried on for quite a while. And then I think I might have gotten to like either the very start of transition or if not really close to it. Because I remember thinking, like, if they're going to be like that, I can't do this, I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And I remember almost recognising that's a good sign, because that means that things are, like, changing.
Yeah.
And that baby is going to be here soon. But I didn't feel like the gas and air was giving me as much relief as I wanted, so I asked for some remifentanil.
Right.
Which is, like, it has, like, a really similar feel to gas and air, but it's delivered intravenously.
Right.
Because I was just knackered at that point, which, when I look back, it wasn't really that long. So, like, hats off to the women who were doing it for, like, 24, 48 hours.
Yeah.
You know, I had only been having surgeries for, like, 6 hours, maybe. But I think my body was just preparing for, like, actually birthing my baby and just trying to, like, conserve some energy.
Yeah.
So I had that, but because it was delivered intravenously, like every 2 minutes after you push this button, I couldn't sleep, and that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to have, like, a little nap. But I couldn't. But the whole way through, I must admit, like, I stayed so relaxed. Like, I was breathing, I was using, like, the breathing techniques that I learnt through the hypnobirthing that I'd done. And my husband was, like, counting breaths for me. So he was, like, counting into 4 and then counting out for 8. And honestly, that was amazing. It was just, like, it gave him something to do. Although I must admit, there were a couple of times where he got to, like, 12 and we were like, hold on a minute. I've got no air left. But yeah, that was amazing. That was so helpful. And I think, like, I remember, like, one specific surge where I didn't stay calm. And like, I can't even begin to explain, like, the contrast between that and one where I was calm.
Right.
Like, it was so much more powerful than when I was just relaxed and just letting my body do it.
Yeah.
Which is mad that, like, you can feel it that much. But yeah, everyone shouted relax at me, and I eventually did. And then on we carried. One of the side effects of remifentanil is that you can forget to breathe, which I was like, that won't happen to me, but it did. And yeah, everyone was shouting at me to breathe, but I was just so chilled out that I was like, that's not necessary.
Yeah.
But so I had to have a little bit of oxygen, but apart from that, absolutely fine. And then I started having, like, downward pushy feelings. I told my midwife, and she was like, oh, just go with it, like, just listen to what your body's saying. So I did, and I think I even still had, like, leggings and everything on at this point. And then I was examined again, and I was 10 centimetres, so she was like, right, okay, so if you want, she was amazing with my birth plan. Like, she knew what I wanted, and I really wanted to give birth, like, upright, to let gravity help me. And she was like, okay, if you want to do the positions that we've spoken about, then the remifentanil's got to go. And I was like, well, we can always take it out, and then if I feel like I need it, we can put it back in, because it's literally just, you know, cannula in your hand.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I didn't feel like I needed it after that. I could literally feel, I could just feel the baby moving down, and it was absolutely amazing. I still had gas and air, and I remember feeling like, I think I might have been a little bit high on the gas and air, but I remember almost feeling like, oh, I can feel his nose and his chin. Like, I know, I think it must have been, like, his head and his shoulders.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, his head was born, and I remember shouting at my husband, like, look, his head's out. And he was like, okay,
Oh.
and had a look. And then, yeah, so he was born with me, like, leaning backwards over the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, placed straight on my chest. And, yeah, that was him born. And then I think within, like, 3 minutes, he peed on me. And that was, like, baptism into motherhood then.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds amazing. Obviously, minus the wee, but you know.
Yeah, but I mean, you've got to get used to that if you're a mum to boys, I feel.
Oh, yeah, I bet. And how was feeding at that time? Had you even thought about it, or were you just going to explore it a bit later on when things had calmed down?
I was quite on the fence, really. I wanted him to have colostrum, but other than that, I wasn't really that bothered about whether I breastfed or not.
Yeah.
So I did put him to the breast, but he wasn't really bothered. Mm-hmm. I don't know. He was really chilled out, and I don't know whether that was a mixture of him having such a calm birth, or maybe like the remifentanil and gas and air still being in his system. Mm-hmm. But he was honestly like so calm. He didn't cry I don't think he cried until we went to get him dressed. Wow. Like, he was just really alert, just like looking around, and I was like, he's meant to cry. Mm-hmm. And the midwife was like, he's absolutely fine. He's just calm. Like, he's just chilled out. Wow. So that was amazing. Yeah. But yeah, so I've spoken to people since actually that have had remifentanil as well, and they said that it took a little while for their babies to like be interested in feeding. So I don't know whether it was that, but I did try. But I don't know whether I wasn't determined enough to like make breastfeeding work for me, because I wasn't really bothered either way. I think like since doing hypnobirthing and since learning more about you know, what our bodies are capable of, I'd probably try harder next time to breastfeed. But yeah, so that didn't really happen. I did try a little bit, but I wasn't overly stressed, and it put me off hearing like how other people around me were like saying that they were in pain, and I was like, well, I can just avoid that by just giving them a bottle.
Right.
So yeah, I wasn't really that fussed, so I ended up going down the formula feeding route, and to be fair, it's worked really well for us as a family. So
great. In
hindsight, I think it would have been nice to try a bit harder to breastfeed, just because I know the benefits of it now, but it worked. Yeah. And it meant my husband could help me more.
Well, exactly, and it's whatever works for you and your family at the end of the day, so...
Definitely, and I don't think it's affected like our bonding or anything like that, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And now looking back on the birth and the immediate few hours afterwards, how do you feel about the care that you received and the support that you had?
So I think the birth, the midwife I have throughout my whole labour, or since I went up to that labour room, she was absolutely incredible. And then I was joined by a second midwife, because as standard anyway at births, but my midwife was like, I finished my shift, but I'm going to stay because you're so close to giving birth. She was brilliant, but I did have another midwife who was still excellent, but it was obvious, she'd obviously just walked in as I was like very close to giving birth, so she hadn't had the time to familiarise herself with my birth plan.
Yeah.
And I remember after he was born, very soon after, whilst like the cord was still pulsating, I'd put on my birth plan that I definitely wanted like delayed cord clamping until the cord was white.
Yeah.
And she went to clamp it, and we were all like, no. But I think that's mainly the handover, and just that they didn't get a lot of time to do it.
Yeah.
Afterwards, the care was good. I think the only thing I would say, I was in hospital for a couple of days, but my husband had just gone. I think it was probably like midnight. So my son was born at 8:00 in the evening, the same day my waters went.
Yeah.
And a midwife came round to ask like how feeding was going, and I'd explained like he has fed from the breast, because at that point I thought he had. And she was like, oh, brilliant, how long was the feed? And I was like, oh, about 2 minutes. And she was like, oh, that's not a feed, darling.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, can you get me a bottle then? And I just feel like the language surrounding birth could have been a little, like, or surrounding that, if that conversation had been different, I wonder whether I would have breastfed if she'd have said something along the lines of, oh, fantastic, that's brilliant, shall we see if you want some more?
Yeah.
Rather than just dismissing what I thought was an achievement.
Definitely. I think we also need to focus on the immediate time after birth and how everyone's spoken to and treated, because it's still not a sensitive time, but it's so special, and you're in sort of a different type of environment within yourself and with your children or your baby, that anything that's maybe worded wrongly, or an incident that happens, even if it doesn't involve you, can sometimes have an effect on you.
Yeah, definitely. You're so, I guess, vulnerable.
Yeah.
And like sensitive in a way to what's going on around you. You need to be like mummed a bit, I guess. Like someone just to put their arm around you and tell you that you've got this.
Yeah.
And I think as well, because the way the NHS works, with partners normally having to leave like fairly soon after babies are born. That's probably, that first night is probably the night you need them most.
Yeah.
And you're there on your own, trying to work out like what the hell has just happened. And like, I had a really positive birth, but it's still something you need to process.
Well, exactly. And the process happens not just to the mother and baby; it also happens to the partner, if there is one there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that
definitely.
That needs to be.
It must be really hard to walk out those doors.
Oh yeah. Thankfully, most women, or most people who go into labour or give birth, don't have to leave the partners with their babies.
Yeah. Definitely.
And how was postnatal life for you within the first few weeks? How were you?
I was good. I think I was like amazed by my body and like what it did. So I was kind of like on cloud nine over that. And then I was settling. I mean, I think those first couple of weeks, I don't even know if I remember them properly, because just like sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
I don't think it was that bad, but I don't remember a lot. But I think my other half has like clearer memories. I remember, I think my son must have been about day 6, like 6 days old, because we gave him his first birth, and I just remember sobbing, and just because of the love that I had for like these two humans.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it's unreal. But I think my milk came in around that time, so I think that sort of accompanied it. But I do remember thinking, like, it was definitely like later than day 3, 4. So I know that's when milk usually comes in. Like, it was later than that. And I remember, like, I had a shower and like my boobs leaked, and I was like, oh my god, like, if I had been breastfeeding, would it have been now that my milk would have come in? And for like the last week, my baby's just hungry.
Yeah.
But obviously, it would have come in quicker, I would imagine, if I was like feeding to encourage it. But I was just like, it's incredible, like the whole thing, that you can take a little egg and a little sperm, grow it into a human, and then nourish them is like mind-boggling.
Incredible, isn't it? And it's so refreshing to hear someone like you speak in this way, because your positivity is not overwhelming, it's just real and honest.
Thank you.
No,
it's very nice.
Definitely. Yeah. And now moving slightly to you professionally, what pushed you to get into hypnobirthing professionally?
Well, I mean, that whole thing, really.
Yeah, definitely.
I thought I'll be the first person to put my hands up, and I say to all my clients, like, with hypnobirthing, you get out what you put in. Yeah. And I 100% could have put more in. Mm-hmm. Like, I went into hypnobirthing when I was learning it myself very skeptically. Right. Because I'm a really logical person. You know, I like a bit of science, and I was like, how is this going to help? Right. But actually, when you start hypnobirthing, it's about so much more than what I thought it was initially about. I thought it was just going to be breathing techniques and picturing yourself somewhere nice, but it's so much more than that. You learn all the science behind, you know, what your body's doing. And I would have thought I was fairly clued up on birth before I trained to teach it. You know, I'd done the hypnobirthing course. I'd done like AS biology. I'd done health and social care. Like, these are things that I'd studied where we touched on pregnancy, labour and birth. But I learned so much. And I was like, how is it that I'm like 28 years old, I've had a child, and I still didn't know how my body worked? Right. So for me, that was a massive, like, part of why I was like, I need to teach people this, because we should be taught this when we're like 16. Yeah. Not now. Like, but yeah, I was so empowered after, and I literally remember just being like, I'm an absolute warrior, and I was like, everyone should feel like this. Amazing. And yeah, and I think, like, throughout my pregnancy, like, there were things, nothing major, you know, I was really lucky with my pregnancy, it was really smooth, but there were some things that if I'd have been a negative person, I could have so easily been like, oh, and that happened, and then that happened. Yeah. But because I think if you look at something from a really positive, like, viewpoint, like, I could look negatively on my labour because I had drugs, but for me, that was the right decision, and I felt like I knew the risks, I knew the benefits, and it was a decision that I made using all the tools that I now teach. Yeah. And yeah, I just felt so empowered that I was like, everyone needs to feel like this, so how am I going to do that? Amazing. And by teaching hypnobirthing was the logical step. Great. And is hypnobirthing something that's openly, like, accepted and well received in your area that you're in right now? Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, it's a little bit of a difficult time because of COVID. So whereas normally I'd be doing, like, group classes face to face, and you get that support, you get to meet those other people, everything is on Zoom. Yeah. Because ultimately the most important thing is keeping people safe. Exactly. So yeah, I think it's really interesting as well how many women have been pointed in my direction or in hypnobirthing's direction from their midwives. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think it's something that throughout the, like, birthing world is gaining a lot of traction, and because the results are there, because there's statistics to prove that it helps and it works. Yeah. So it's really interesting seeing it from that point of view as well. Definitely. And is hypnobirthing something that you plan to branch out on, in terms of maybe you want to focus or specialise in something specific, or are you just going to continue supporting people through hypnobirthing? For the time being, I think with my son being so young, teaching hypnobirthing is the next best thing, well, the next step for quite a while. Perfect. I would love to be a doula one day and take it that step further. Yeah. But I'm on a bit of a mission that I'm talking about freely, like I have a plan, but I don't have a plan. But I feel like saying it out loud is going to be the first step of my plan. Yeah, definitely. And what I really, really am passionate about doing is changing the way that we talk about birth. Amazing. Changing the way the media portrays it and the way that we educate our children on it. Yeah. And the flip side as well, you know, the support that's there for people who don't have births that make them feel empowered and like warriors. So that's my mission. Yeah. And anyone that's got any ideas on how I can turn that into a plan, I am more than happy to have a message from you.
No, amazing. And I hope this plan or this whole mission that you've got is going to take off rapidly, because it's so, so important, and I 100% believe in it.
Definitely. You might be the first one on my little mission train.
No, I'm so thankful that you've come on today and shared your experiences and just your outlook on everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely to, put more pressure on myself to get this mission underway.
Oh, definitely.
Share the word that, I think the more we talk about birth and whatever kind of experience that is, the less taboo it is. And that's only got to be a good thing.
Exactly.
And I think the only thing we need to be mindful of as a society is almost protecting our pregnant women and their partners, and just being aware of what stories we're telling them and what that might do to their mindset. And actually, if you've got a birth story that you feel was traumatic, is this the best person to talk to about it?
Yeah.
Or even just ask them whether they want to hear it, because some people do want to prepare themselves for every eventuality. And likewise, if you've had a birth experience like that, you 100% have the right to share it. You should.
Mm-hmm.
But when you know how damaging that can potentially be for someone's mindset, if they do want to just fill their head with positivity,
yeah,
it's just worth considering about and just being mindful of that.
Definitely, 100%. Exactly what you've said is something everyone should take into account.
Definitely, because I think probably every woman that you have spoken to, every person that you've spoken to will turn around if asked and say, yeah, I told my neighbour, I told my sister-in-law, I told my grandmother that I was expecting, and the first thing they came back to me and said was something along the lines of, good luck, you're going to need it because yada, 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 yada.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm hopeful that all of that is eventually changed and more positive light comes into the situation and the whole aspect of life, really.
Yeah, it all has a little bit of a flip on its head.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think that'll be what makes us all have more positive births.
Definitely.
Or, definitely the rate of them will go up.
100%.